Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to SafeDefend Live. I'm with Doc Vecchi, and it's Dave Evans here live from our studios in Guthrie, Oklahoma. Shout out to Guthrie. Love you guys. Greatest little town in Oklahoma. But today we've been talking a lot about threat assessments, and I've had people ask me, yeah, I get it, but how do you get started? What does that program look like? How do you manage the cases? And Doc actually didn't know that, but he mentioned this morning we were talking that we should talk about what case management looks like. How do you build the team, and what's next if you're a local school that's really wanting to get to the left side of this and stop it before it happens? So I'm looking forward to hear what Doc has to tell us about managing case management and building a threat assessment team. Hopefully this will be helpful to all the schools out there that are trying to make a difference. So Doc, it's your show, baby. What do we got?
Good seeing you, Dave. We've been talking a lot about, the threat assessment process, right? What to look for as far as the behaviors and stuff. But really, even having some knowledge or even training on that's really useless if you can't operationalize it in an organizational setting, right? And have it something that's, consistent, that you don't lose information and you can keep track of everything, because essentially, this is serious stuff. Whether you're in a school or a business, you're tracking employees, students, other people. And the consequences could be serious. So we want to make sure that we have a good process and structure, because without that, the behavioral analysis stuff that we've been talking about really becomes useless, because we've got to be able to, assign it to a report and an incident and then manage that. And that's what I wanted to talk a little bit about today. And this goes for both, schools and workplaces. So it doesn't really matter either environment. It's just a different set of people, I guess, that you might include in your threat assessment team. One of the things with threat assessment, regardless if you're in a school or workplace, is it has to be diverse perspectives. It can't just be all cops. It can't be all mental health professionals or all principals and teachers. You've got to have a multiple perspective, kind of a synergy, right? That you pull together. And typically, what you try to do is just generally. Now, you can use whatever specific role or job title, but essentially, the three elements that you should have at a threat assessment team is some sort of mental health professional, someone who understands psychology, behavior, things like that, right? So that's number one. So you should have someone like that on the team. In a school, it might be the school counselor. It might even be an outside, contractor, psychologist, psychiatrist, someone that understands that part of it. And then the second team member should be someone from security or law enforcement. Got to have that perspective. And then the third one is someone from management, administration. It might be in a school situation. It might be a principal, assistant principal. It might even be a teacher. It might be someone that represents the organization. If it's in a business, it might be someone from human resources, for example. So essentially, those three perspectives is what we need for a good threat assessment team, right? And so that's kind of number one. And the reason we do that is because we want to have those perspectives, because each one of those perspectives we have found adds a lot of value to the overall threat assessment in terms of how do we assess this? What do we have? Where are they on the pathway? And then what appropriate interventions might we use? Okay. And so that's the structure. It's a team structure. Now, one thing you may add to that team as necessary is case-specific people, right? It might be a consultant, for kind of an unusual case. It might be maybe another person who knows the person of concern in a certain manner, and you might include that person. But essentially, you've got your core team, and then you might add other people as necessary. So there's your team, right? We're still not managing here, but that kind of sets things up, right? And of course, the training, we can't, forget the training. Every team member needs to be trained on threat observations, how to make sense of those, and then actual threat assessment training, right? Which is going to be how do you come up with a threat confidence level. How do you decide on a proper intervention? Things like that. And it's all based on observations of pathway behaviors and other threat mitigators and enhancers like mental illness, or maybe even positive things like a good support network and stuff like that we take in consideration to make that assessment as accurate as possible. And then essentially what we're doing is it's basically an investigation, right? I kind of look at it as three things. You identify the threat or the concerning person, okay? And that's done through your direct and indirect behaviors, other information, maybe electronic information you might get off social media, whatever. You want to classify that threat, okay? Is it something we have to deal with right now, or is it something that we can just monitor, right? Because we don't want to take the wrong intervention, which is the third one, engagement, right? We don't want to take the wrong intervention. We don't, try to lock somebody up or use kind of a security police effort or resources when the person's just in crisis, right? And so we want to be respectful of the resources and use them as needed and as they're supposed to be used. And then essentially from there, it's a matter of case management. I mean, what I mean by case management is this is something you can track. You can track it through documents, through some sort of a database maybe, or even Excel spreadsheets. There's a lot of things you can do that are very cheap and frankly free, right, that you can put together. There are some software companies, vendors that provide case management software that's pretty good, right? But you have to understand that case management isn't threat assessment. It's basically your structure, your and your steps you're going to go through in the investigation. Now, what you might want to do also is if you have a large district, a school district, where you have multiple schools, you have the superintendent's office, you may have like sub-threat assessment teams throughout your district. So for example, if you have a elementary school, a middle school, and a high school, you could have threat assessment teams for each one of those. And it doesn't have to be someone that does this full time. They're usually collateral positions, just people who are trained, who has the time to do it and who has the knowledge and capability to do that. And then at your higher level, I guess you could say, for lack of a better term, maybe at the district level, you'd have a threat assessment team that would kind of manage the threat assessment teams, right? Just, putting in kind of a sounding board, adding value to what they have, maybe asking, questions they didn't think about and things like that. And then basically, it's just a matter of collecting the data and storing it. And we do that basically through procedural SOPs type stuff, which I'll probably talk about next week. I'm not going to get into that so much right now. But the key is its consistency, sequencing, and also using forms, prearranged forms that fit your context. So you might have a form that you would fill out when you talk to the concerning person. You might have a form you fill out when you're talking to the potential victim or who that target might be. Maybe to the parents, if you talk to them, you'd have a form for the mental health professional, a form for the security person. And you can just pretty much add whatever you want as long as the form is consistent with the process of threat assessment, looking at the behaviors and asking the right questions, and then getting that information so that you can just pretty much assess it and come up with the right threat level and the right intervention. And that's pretty much it.
Well, Doc, I think that we've covered some important things. So what does the team look like? So somebody with medical, psychological experience on the team, right? A counselor, whatnot, a security specialist, leadership in the school, and then outside resources as required based on what you're seeing for the particular case that you're involved with. I think the one thing about threat assessment, people need to understand, we use the term investigate. It's not investigate in a police sense. It's to look after, is what we're seeing coming in the door, is it accurate? And is it a potential threat? And how do we need to address that, right? Because this is all about getting the person help before they go too far down the pathway to violence and make a bad decision. Is that a fair statement, Doc?
Couldn't say it better.
All right. Well, if you want to learn more about threat assessments and how we can help, reach out to us at SafeDefend.com. We're all out there for you, and we would love to have a conversation. More importantly, we'd love to educate your staff on what a threat assessment team looks like and how you can implement it in your schools. With that, for this week, Doc and Dave, we are out of here.
Have a great weekend.